So the first question that people always ask me on this topic is, what do people love? And people love all kinds of things. It's kind of amazing. However, the most common, there are certain types of items, I haven't quantified this, but there are certain types of things that people just mention all the time. So nature and animals, especially pets, are right at the top. Everybody loves nature. And if they have a pet, they love their pet. People love things that connect us to other people. So this might be their cell phone that, you know, serves as an obvious connection. Sports is huge here, in part because it connects them very much to other fans and the people they watch the sports with. Cooking, because you're creating these meals that connect you to other people. People also love things that create sort of really rich, immersive experiences. And some of these rich experiences are really exhilarating, like skiing. Some of them can be very calming, like that, you know, I love music because I come home and I sit on my couch after a hard day's work and I put on music and I just sort of relax into it. So they can be sort of up tempo or down tempo, but in either case, they are immersive and rich kinds of felt experiences. People love the things that make their life feel more meaningful. So this could be charities or products or services that are connected to some sort of a social mission or cause. This is huge, especially with younger consumers. As you get to the Gen Z consumers, they are really big on this. And just about every company that I talk to, one of the things they want to know is, you know, are we doing this right? Do we have the right social mission stuff going? Because that seems to matter a lot to the younger consumers. People love anthropomorphic things, which are objects that resemble people in some way. So in this picture, we've got the car. This is the Google's self-driving car. And you can see, obviously, it's very intentionally made to have like a human face on it. But it could also be Siri on an iPhone, which doesn't look like anything, but sounds like, and you interact with it as if it was a person. And lastly, but certainly not least, people love things that help define their identity. And this is true. We've been focusing a lot on identity the whole semester, but identity really plays a very significant role in people's consumer choices. You know, who exactly they want to be. And that, you know, has a lot to do with what things they end up loving or not loving. So people love, as I said, you know, a wide variety of things. And I will share with you my favorite little video about some other things that people love.
Never gets old, huh? Nope. It kind of makes you want to break into song. Yep. I love the mountains. I love the clear blue skies. I love big bridges. I love when gray whites fly. I love the whole world and all its sights and sounds. Boom-de-yada, 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 boom-de-yada.
I love the oceans.
I love real dirty things.
I love to go fast.
I love Egyptian kings.
I love the whole world
And all its craziness.
Ahuvia, 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 Ahuvia.
I love tornadoes.
I love arachnids.
I love hot magma.
I love the giant squids.
I love the whole world. It's such a brilliant place. Boom-de-yada, 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 boom-de-yada.
Okay, if that doesn't put you in a good mood, nothing will. No. I recently did a survey on MTurk, so it was not at all, you know, it's not representative sample, but it's a pretty diverse sample. And I asked the people there what brands they love, just to list a couple of brands that they love. And the results were really interesting to me. So here are the most loved brands. Apple is, you know, #1 still. Nike is coming in there. Samsung did quite well. Samsung people were quite pleased to see that. What's most interesting though about this is that when you graph out like all the different brands that people mentioned, we get your classic long tail distribution. So on this end, you've got this like one here is Apple, as I mentioned, and this one is Nike. So like a few brands that are loved by a lot of people. There were only 28 brands that were mentioned by 10 or more people, which is not a lot. So it's a really small number of brands that are loved by a lot of people. And then an astonishing number of brands that were loved by only one person. So we had 502 different brands that were mentioned by just one person. And what this tells me is that first, for a lot of these brands, you know, people can love them. Somebody does, right? It's possible for them to generate love. Somebody loves them. But people are very idiosyncratic in the brands that they love. And it's like both good news and bad news for a lot of these brands. The good news is that, you know, you have that potential to be loved, but the bad news is right now it's a very idiosyncratic thing that you have a very small following of people who feel that way, but it's really not, you know, a large group. Now we're going to start talking about how this happens, not just describing like what brands people love, but really getting into the psychology of why people love things and how people love things. And it turns out that there is sort of a deep puzzle in brand love, in people's love of things other than people. And I'll get to that in a moment, but I want to start here by asking you to think about how fast you have driven. How fast you have driven. So what I want you to do is just hold up your hand to indicate the number. First of all, you're going to raise your hand. Everyone start with your hand up. Everybody hand up. And then I'm going to have you put down your hand when I get to a speed faster than you've gone. Okay, so let's say 90 miles an hour. If you have not driven 90, put your hand down. 100. If you've not driven 100, put your hand down. 110, 120. You got like, Gene, you're here. Gene, did you do it on a track or on a road?
So I did it on the track, on a drag strip. My buddy's dad let me drag race his modified Camaro. So that got up to about 170 down the quarter mile.
Crap, that's really fast. That's really good. So, and I'm glad to hear you did it on a drag strip. I gave this talk at Audi in Germany, and asked the same question. And everybody, all the executives there, they all had their hands up and they just were never going down. I was doing it in kilometers, but I was getting to like 250 kilometers an hour, 300 kilometers an hour. And it turns out that when you get to be an executive at Audi, they take you out onto the track and they put you in one of their R8 supercars and give you driving lessons until you can go like 200 miles an hour. They want you to have that experience. So I thought that would be great. I wish they would give me that chance. That sounds like really a lot of fun. Anyway, the amazing thing about how fast we have driven, all of us, is that we're still alive. So if you think about it, your body evolved, you know, at most for like running. And the fastest people in the world run at about 20 miles an hour. So there's no reason that your body should be able to help you go faster than like 20 miles an hour. But it does, right? So we have these systems, and I mean, by these systems, I mean like your visual system, your sense of balance. You've got an intuitive system that controls like speed and helps you figure if I'm going this fast, how soon am I going to be at this further point in the distance? So you've got all those sort of systems in your brain that you use when you're driving. They all evolved for something else. They all evolved for, you know, walking and running. But now we have cars. We didn't have cars then, but now we do. So we take this old system and we apply it in this new way, and it works amazingly. You know, we can go 70 miles an hour and not kill ourselves. Another example of this, if you take a guy who loves sports cars and you tell him, get him to think about sports cars, he will literally salivate if you like show him a picture of a good-looking sports car, an attractive, interesting sports car. Why would he do that? You know, why does the human body, not the individual, why does the human body salivate in that situation? Well, salivation makes a lot of sense for food, right? So when you see food that you find appetizing, you salivate because first, having a wet mouth is easier to chew and swallow the food. And second, the saliva contains enzymes that actually start the digestive process, so that when you're chewing the food, the digestive process is already starting due to the salivation. So there's a lot of good reasons why before we eat, we might salivate. What's happening here is, again, there were no sports cars, you know, as the human body was evolving. So your brain is like, oh, I've got this thing. I need to find something that I've already got and use it and apply it in this new situation. So it takes a system of hunger, because it's kind of like that. You want the food and you want the sports car, and it applies this hunger system to this new stimulus. And then you end up salivating for something that you're not, you know, literally going to eat. So we have the same thing here. Love did not evolve so that you could love your cell phone, even though you do probably love your cell phone. It didn't evolve for that purpose. It evolved for making families. And what we do when we love things is we take this old system that evolved for making families and, again, apply it in a new way, just as with these other examples. So what does love do in the context of families? Well, it does three big things. First, it brings people together. It creates attraction between people and brings them together. Second, it creates a willingness to sacrifice. So here is this guy, you know, I have a hunch he really would rather not be carrying his kid around the fair, but he had the kid, and now the kid says he's tired. He's going to walk around carrying his kid all around the fair. So you make a lot of sacrifices quite willingly for the children and for your spouse, you know, in a family situation. And the third thing it does is it holds people together. Humans are not the only animals. I was so surprised. It was really interesting. I always assumed that humans would be the only animals that actually loved, but that is not true. There are a lot of other mammals that, if they mate for life, that have something that is really pretty much the same as, very similar to human love. And we know this because we take the animals and put them in fMRIs and do brain scans on them when they see their little animal mate, and their brain activation is the same as human brain activation when we experience love. So there's a really good indication that we're not the only animals that love. But different animals stay together for different amounts of time, depending on how long it takes them to raise their kids. Humans have the longest time. Our children take forever before they are really independent, longer than any other animal. And so love, especially in people, has to hold us together long enough for the child to be successful on its own. All right, so let's take this, and now we have this system that applied, developed, evolved for families, but we're going to apply it to products. And what do we get? Well, we get the same sort of attraction, but now it's sort of attraction to products that spark our interest. We get sacrifices, willingness to sacrifice, and that becomes a willingness to pay a higher price for the product, or perhaps if you really love a brand or a product and it isn't available at the store you're in, you might actually go to a different store to buy the product, which from a marketing perspective is extremely valuable if customers are doing that. And then we have this long-term relationship that becomes, you know, brand loyalty and brand commitment, represented here by this woman with the Chanel tattoo on her arm. There's a fourth benefit of things that we love that sort of comes free as a free bonus, and that is that people love to talk about the brands and products that they own. This was always important. Word of mouth was always important, but now with the internet, word of mouth or word of mouse has become far more, even more important. And so if you get people to love your product and they start sharing their love with others, that's extremely important from a marketing point of view. Well, research, mine and others, shows that when people fall in love with products, it really has a powerful effect on their behavior. So in some of my work, what we've done is we've created this sort of variable that brings together people's repurchase intentions, positive word of mouth for the product, questioning negative information. There's a lot of negative information online. People get, all sorts of things. Even if it's the best product in the world, there'll be negative reviews. So how do people respond to that? Do they question that negative information? And having a loyal relationship with the brand. It kind of averages all of these things together into some managerial outcome. And then we look at, well, how much does the consumer's perceived quality impact all of those things? And it impacts them fairly, reasonably strongly. The R squared on that relationship is 0.17. But if we look at brand love, if you measure it the way we do, you can get R squareds up at like 0.87, which is just astonishingly high. So this is really powerful stuff. Love. Another study that was done recently, and I'm really pleased with this one since I didn't do it, so it has more of an objective kind of feel to it. It analyzed 286 different studies that have looked at brand love as well as other similar measures like brand attachment, trust, brand identification, et cetera. And it found that brand love was the best predictor of brand loyalty. Recently, brand love is, as this slide says, a case of mistaken identity. Here's where things start to get weird. You can think of relationships as ranging from sort of cool, instrumental, pragmatic relationships. Business relationships are often this way. To, on the other extreme, warm, sort of caring connection relationships. Normally, we take objects, and our relationships with objects are very cool and pragmatic. They're not emotionally very warm. Think of a milk carton, right? You finish the milk, then you just throw away the milk carton, and you have just zero emotional attachment to that milk carton. As soon as it isn't needed, it's gone, no problem. Friends and family, on the other hand, are here very much at the warm, caring connection side of things. Some people are over here at the cool, instrumental, pragmatic. And when we treat people that way, we say we have, quote, objectified them, right? So this is just, this is very common in human relationships. The person that, at the checkout counter at the grocery store, you don't have any animosity towards that person, but neither do you feel a lot of warmth towards that person. You just want to buy your groceries and get on with your life, right? So there's a lot of times, even with people, we could have this cooler kind of relationship. This term, say we've objectified them, is interesting because if you think about it, what that means is, well, it means we're treating them like an object. And if we're treating the person like an object, it means that there must be some way that we treat objects, right? There must be something we're treating the person like. There has to be the standard way of treating objects. And that standard way is to not be emotionally attached to them. That makes a lot of sense. In fact, in terms of evolution, it's rational. If we were evolutionarily perfect, we would treat friends and family with a lot of attachment, but objects, we would just never get emotionally attached to objects. It's not saying that we wouldn't think they were important, but we'd only see them as important if they've actually helped us in some way. Once they stopped working, we just, get rid of them. when we love things, the things we love get pushed over to here on the sort of warm, caring relationship side. And so the question is, how did some objects move from the object where the objects belong over here over to these warm, caring relationship kind of things? And what I'm going to tell you is that it's always a case of mistaken identity. Your brain, it turns out, when you love an object, at some level, your brain is treating it as if it was a person. And so for that reason, it has to fool your brain in some way into thinking that it's a person, or it's not going to get any love. And there are 4 ways that you kind of fool your brain into thinking that an object is a person. So we'll go through each of these. The first is anthropomorphism. Then if it's part of another person. Okay. Third is if it's part of yourself. And the fourth is if you have a communal relationship with the brand. So let's start with anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism, the word is used in two ways, connected ways. So in one case, we talk about a product being anthropomorphic. What we mean is the product resembles a person. So if you look at these 2 slot machines, the one here on the left kind of looks a little bit more like a person than the one on the right. So this is sort of an anthropomorphic machine. When we also talk about anthropomorphism, what we mean is that a person is responding to something like this by treating the machine as if it was a person in some way. So here's a really interesting study that was done. In the study, they measured people's social dominance. So what social dominance means, if you're high in social dominance, it means you think you can get other people to do what you want. You think if I'm going to be negotiating with these people, I'm going to get the better deal, right? So Donald Trump perceives himself as being extremely high in social dominance, right? He thinks he's going to get the better of somebody else if they start negotiating. People who are very low in social dominance, they think themselves, oh, I'm someone who gets pushed around a lot, right? I get in these situations and other people tend to take advantage of me. So that's what that means. So if you were someone who was high in social dominance, which of these slot machines do you think you'd prefer to play? Hold up 1 or 2 fingers. Yeah, so you think like, I get the better of people. This kind of looks like a person. I'm going to want to do that. And that's what the researchers found. On the other hand, for people who were low in social dominance, they would prefer to play, they turned out they would prefer to play number 2. So it's not like everyone likes number 1 because it's cuter. The only people who really like number 1 are the people who think they can take advantage of people who think I get taken advantage of, they like number 2. Kevin, did I see a hand?
Yes, I was just going to note, the only thing I would consider is the payout ratios.
Yeah, well, that's because you're very rational. You're trying to be very rational, but people think they're rational, yet they make these decisions anyway. It's very interesting.
I don't gamble, so.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, this is like Las Vegas is going to take these people to the cleaners because, they can make the machine look a little bit more like a person. You're not going to actually be able to take advantage of the machine, right? You just have that even if you think that you might do that. So a lot of companies are starting to get into sort of the anthropomorphism thing. It turns out that products mostly, not all the time, but mostly, if a product looks or sounds like a person, consumers tend to like it more, they trust it more, they have a lot of sort of positive affect towards it, they feel more warmly towards it. So we're seeing products and ads for products that you wouldn't think of as being anthropomorphic. Here's even a business-to-business brand that's using anthropomorphism, which was kind of interesting and surprising to me. Here's a very subtle thing. So this arrow, I added the arrow myself to the picture. It wasn't there. But if you just looked at this ad, you might not even notice that on like the competing brand all of the little faces from the outlets are kind of frowning or flat, but on the Febreze brand, it's smiling underneath there. Cars, they actually, when you design a car, they actually call the front of the car its face. And people evaluate the character or personality of the car the same way they evaluate human character or personality. So if it has a smiling face, they see it as warm and compliant. If it has this sort of a very aggressive face, they see it as domineering and powerful. And as companies have come to realize how powerful this can be, you get much more sort of overt anthropomorphism. So like here on this Porsche, if you look at the light bulb, the headlight, that's the word I'm looking for, look at the headlight, it clearly has an eyeball. You know, that's definitely the aesthetic that they're going for there. So there's very overt uses of anthropomorphism now. It doesn't always work. There are some situations where anthropomorphic products can backfire on companies. First of all, people who don't trust other people or have fears, are fearful of other people, they also do not like anthropomorphic products. Now, in general, more people are sort of trusting of other people than there are people who are very fearful. But for those people, they take their fearfulness and project it onto the brand of the product as well. The other thing is that if there's some sort of a failure, it's worse if the product or brand is seen in anthropomorphic terms. Because if the product is just this inanimate object and it breaks, well, it broke, right? But if you've probably had this experience, many of you, with your computer, and you just cannot, something's going on, you cannot get your computer to do what you want. Most people in this situation start to anthropomorphize their computer and they start talking to their computer. The computer is the most talked to object in the home. But what happens is if people anthropomorphize it, they come to feel like the computer doesn't like them. The computer, frankly, is an asshole. Like it's just not being cooperative. It's being a jerk, right? And so you personify it, and then it takes on these negative qualities. Here's something from the homework. If we look at this quote from Toyota's CEO, I want a relationship with my car in the same way. And then the rest of that quote was the same way that I want people to have friends on Facebook or friends on social media, something to that effect. And I thought that quote was very interesting and sort of insightful, because your friends on social media, like if you have a computer impersonate a person, at current levels of technology, you couldn't make an Android that would pass as the body of a person, would pass that way. But you could have a computer impersonate a person on social media, right? If it's just typed language, right? So in that digital context, it's much easier for people to form relationships with inanimate objects, because they're corresponding through written text to sort of the home turf of that of technology. Okay. If you want to create connections between the brand and the consumer, one way that people seem now to forget about, everything is so digital, and I just put this in as a reminder, the old tried and true way to do that is to actually have the person form a connection with another person, with an employee of the company. And this works extremely well. It's expensive, but if you can, and there are problems if the employee leaves, but it really does work. If people feel like they have a connection to a person who works at the company, then they feel a much, much stronger connection to the brand. All right, so that's anthropomorphism. Any questions on anthropomorphism before I go on to the next? Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, just kind of a curiosity. It popped out in my head when I was reading the Toyota article about how they want you to see your car as a friend. And it made me start asking this. I was about to ask you the question, and then you went in the slides to talk about where it backfires. And I'm curious how this is going to go with, like, so many companies want to monetize data. And if these same companies are trying to make their products seem human-like, to me, that feels like a betrayal. Like if all of a sudden I think of my car like a person, and then I find out my car is collecting my data and selling it to someone, I may think of that as more of a betrayal than I would if it was just this inanimate object. So I'm curious if that is backfiring.
That's exactly right. And it's really a problem. And a lot of companies, I mean, I haven't written on this yet, but it's on my to-do list. And there really is a dark side to a lot of this brand love stuff. It turns out the research that I'm doing on sort of the immediate impact of brand love is actually pretty positive. That people are, people who love brands actually tend to be happier than people who don't. I don't think it's because loving brands itself makes you happy. I think it's because there's something about a happy person that makes them open to loving brands. But at least you're not getting any negative sort of effects there. On the other hand, if you have a strictly business kind of relationship with a company, the moral obligations are less than if you have a friend, right? We expect more from our friends than we do from the supermarket. And if the supermarket starts telling you that it wants to be your friend, it is taking on these moral obligations that it didn't really necessarily have before. I mean, before you don't cheat strangers, you don't lie to them, right? But if a stranger is, making a bad choice, you don't necessarily feel it's your place to go and tell them they should make a good choice, right? But if you got a friend and the friend comes to you and says, "Oh, I hear you're selling this product used, for $50. I'd like to buy it," and you think, this product really isn't worth $50. You might say, "No, don't buy this from me. It's really not worth it," right? Because we treat a friend that way, and so you just end up in a different moral domain. And I don't think the companies are ready for that. I'm going to talk about it a little bit at the end of the lecture, but I don't think the companies think that way or are ready for the the backlash that they can get, if they start doing this.
Yeah. It seems like they may find themselves in a dark zone. They're not strategic about the degree to which they anthropomorphize them. They can get in trouble with.
Yeah, they can get in trouble with that, right? Over-promising. Relationships are complicated, right? Human relationships, like intimate relationships, are really complicated. And companies are getting into that area, and then that's potentially risky for them and for the rest of us. All right, so the first part was anthropomorphism. The second way that you can take an object that normally is just pragmatic, it's just a rock, I don't care about it, I just want to know, is it useful to me, is it not useful to me? How do you take that and go from there to the sort of warm, caring connection? Well, if you make the object part of the person's self. You are a person, and if the object becomes part of who you are, then it is, in a sense, an honorary person because it's part of you and you're a person. And you have a very strong sense of liking for yourself. You think good things about yourself. You care about yourself. You want to help yourself. You want to protect yourself, et cetera, et cetera. And if a product becomes part of who you are, then that carries over to the product as well. So this sort of self-integration, integrating the brand or the product into the person's identity is a big part of this. And Apple is super at this, right? So they've got the two things going. You need to have the functional product quality. And if in this Apple ad as an example, it says, why you will love a Mac, it starts off with, it just works. So it's promising you, functional quality that you can actually get use value out of. But then it's also got these pictures, right? I'm a PC and I'm a Mac. And what it's saying there is, hey, if they're betting correctly that many more people sort of see themselves as the Mac guy rather than seeing themselves as the PC guy. And so this is a way of getting people to identify with Mac, and they really do. I mean, people are get very identified with Apple products. I actually heard an anecdote about someone who was, really in love with, Apple and iPhones and whatnot, and saw someone else who had an iPhone and told them that they didn't think they should have an iPhone because you're not the right kind of person for an iPhone, right? You're more of a Android person, right? You're not one of us, which is, absurd, but shows how identified people can get, with some of these products. I had a very small sort of relationship with Microsoft regarding the launch of their website. And it was really funny to me, though. This was one of the ads they had for their new website, Outlook.com. And this guy that they had pictured is obviously trying to be like this guy. So they're like, we're just tired of you saying we're this guy. No, we're this guy too. One of the ways that you get products to be seen as part of a person's identity is touching them at a deeper level. And this is part of, we get into the whole life meaning, like the product, it's not just a tool. It's not just a scissors that I use to cut paper into. It's something that really connects to me at a deep personal level. And so a lot of companies are working on this. Avon does a great job with their association with breast cancer. And part of the reason this works so well for them is that breast cancer is a great fit for Avon, right? Avon is seen as a company that is run by women. I don't know if it's still owned by women, but when it started, it was owned by women. Its sales force is overwhelmingly women. It sells products that are overwhelmingly used by women. So it's very female associated brand. And breast cancer is obviously a women's issue, although some men do get breast cancer, but it's still in popular imagination a women's issue. So there's an obvious connection. It makes sense that Avon would support breast cancer. And that's what you need. You need to find a way of doing something that's meaningful, that actually makes sense for the company and the brand. You get a lot of other companies who've seen, Avon's success with this, and they're like, well, we're going to support breast cancer too. And that may be a great thing to do because it's important to support breast cancer research, but it's not going to work the same way for, some other company that doesn't have the same sort of connection, or it doesn't make sense for the brand in the same way. So here's a nice example. This is Carlsberg beer. Saying, what kind of a moral value can we attach Carlsberg beer to? And I'll show the ad, and we can talk about what kind of, message they're sending. I'll take hands to call on people. What do you think the sort of the message of that ad was? I love that ad. What do you think the message was? Robbie?
That beer is for those who are sort of brave and willing to get what they want. Like, I'm just trying to piece it together what it means to me. Like, yeah, that it's for people who are sort of rugged and willing to persevere and push through.
Well, the brave was a good point. It definitely has to do with bravery, right? But they used their bravery to overcome what? What were they? What was the challenge that was put before them?
Intimidation.
Yeah, Ratika?
Kind of come out of their comfort zone, because it seems like mostly they were couples and it was like surrounded by like men, and so for the couple they wanted them to feel you have to come out of your comfort zone. Kind of.
Absolutely. So there's bravery, coming out of your comfort zone. What was the sort of specific, if you were to say those people who didn't go and take the seat, if you were to criticize them and say you guys did something wrong, aside from saying, well, maybe you were cowardly or something, what criticism would you make of those people? Giuliano.
Yeah, I think they play a little bit of stereotypes as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, those guys were freaking scary looking. I mean, they did a really good job of getting scary looking guys, but it was a stereotype, right? So there's a stereotype. So the question is, are you going to judge these people by the stereotype that we have of them? Or are you going to overcome the fear that comes with that stereotype? And Kevin?
So they had sort of a biker look to them. And I associate bikers with like bike clubs. So once they actually sat down and joined them, they were part of the club per se.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so there's a sociologist named Campbell, Joseph Campbell, who some years ago had a really big hit series on PBS, a documentary series and a book about mythology and how to interpret myths. And one of the main themes he talked about was the hero's journey. And he explained that in all cultures around the world, there's a common structure to a hero's story. And what happens is the hero is going along with, his or her day-to-day life, and all of a sudden something kind of extraordinary happens that plucks them out of their normal life and puts them in this dramatic situation. And then they have to overcome a series of obstacles. But if they do overcome the series of obstacles, then they get some sort of boon, some reward for overcoming these obstacles, and they grow and change as a person and go back to their society a better, stronger person for their experience. And this was, a 60-second hero's journey. You have these everyday people, they find themselves in this bizarre situation where there's only 2 seats left. And the question is, are they going to be ruled by their stereotypes, or are they going to have the bravery to overcome their stereotypes? And if they do show this bravery, then they become the heroes and everyone applauds them and the spotlight's on them and they get a beer for their reward and they come through the situation, having a stronger, better personally for this. And part of what the values that's being expressed here, that the reason this works for beer, that's so great, is that, what's true about beer? Well, one thing that's true about beer is it brings people together, right? Alcohol has its ups and downs, and there are some very bad things about alcohol, but some of the good things is that it's a social lubricant. It helps you, meet other people and feel comfortable with them and form those sorts of connections. And so for a beer brand, this actually is a really good demonstration. In this case, the beer comes afterwards, but it's a good demonstration of like what beer can do that's not just tasting good and making you feel better, that makes it a sort of more deeply meaningful act to, you know, have a beer with somebody. All right, so here's another one.
नाना ये देखो शील्ड लेग हेलमेट
होमवर्क हो गया?
मम्मी ये देखो
फिर दाग लगा दिया। पापा ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट। हेलो, या आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू सेंड यू द ईमेल इन 5 मिनट्स। या गिव मी 5 मिनट्स, आई एम वर्किंग ऑन द प्रेजेंट।
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई, घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है। आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी। सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है। सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं। ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है, पर कहता भी कैसे है।
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना।
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा। तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा। घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी। उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है। पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई। इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं। किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं। इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं। तुम्हारा पापा।
So that's a really emotional ad. I really like that one. For the, you know, obviously women buy the laundry detergent. It's targeting women. And it's really speaking to and addressing a concern of theirs. I don't know if it's going to have much luck, you know, getting men to do more of the laundry or not, but it certainly at an emotional level really reaches out to a lot of women who feel it really sort of speaks for them and connects to these, you know, deeper, more personal, more intimate issues in their life in a very positive way. So here's one last one that I think is particularly brilliant. One of the things that happened a number of years ago when people started doing, academics started doing a lot of qualitative research on people's relationships with products and with brands, is we discovered that a lot of the time when people love the product, it's not because of the way the product was when it arrived, when they just bought it. It's because over time, the person builds up this relationship with the product. So the love isn't really purchased with the product. The product just comes, and then the love comes later as they have all these experiences with the product. And from a marketing perspective, the problem with that is, you know, how do you sell that, right? Because, you know, that's very idiosyncratic. It's true for one person, and it happened after they bought the product. So, you know, how is that supposed to help you market a product in that sense? And what they've done here, I think really effectively, as you'll see, is that they take one person's story, and you know, your mileage may vary. You may not have the same impulse that I had, but my reaction when I saw this for the first time was to think, I want that. I want to have a relationship with my car like that. And if buying a Chevy is going to give me that kind of a relationship with a car, then, you know, I want one too. So it was able to take this very personal thing and make it useful in marketing.
It was more than a car to him. It really was his baby. He has no idea that we've searched for it, and it's going to be the surprise of his life, I think.
Okay, I got you. Oh, no. Dear God. That's my old Chevy.
We got it, Pop.
You're kidding me.
Come on.
Where'd you get it?
We found it. It took 5 years.
Really? Dear me.
It's all good, Dad. We found it.
Wow. Oh, and it's the same.
Yep.
It's the same.
It's not just a car. It's all the memories and the feelings. It brings all that back.
From fathers to sons, Chevy runs deep.
Yeah, that's really nice too. So these are all ways of getting the product or the brand to feel more intimate, to feel a deeper, sometimes a moral connection or a personal connection. And that's what really brings it in to a sense of love and person's love for the product and the brand when it becomes part of their identity in this deeper way. So the third method here is not so much to make the product a part of the consumer's identity directly, but to make the product part of another person's identity that the consumer is interacting with. And then if they love that other person or like that other person, the product that takes on that relationship as well. So the product gets sort of brought into the relationship through another person. There's a great quote by one of sort of my personal hero researchers, a guy named Russ Belk. And he said, every time you start looking at a consumer's relationship with a product, it looks like a person-thing relationship, like it's them and the product. But then as you talk to them and get to understand what's going on, you always find out that it's person, thing, person. And I find this to be so true, that at the other side, there's always another person at the other end, right? So, the father had this relationship with the car, but now it's the father knows that his family found the car and brought it back for him. So that car is going to be twice as meaningful to him now because the car connects him to his family, and for the family, the car connects them to the father. So these products that work to connect people together in this way, sometimes I call these people connectors because they connect people. They're also called relationship markers because they'll mark a relationship. And you think like a wedding band is the classic example, right? This marks the relationship between the husband and the wife. These products are associated with the other person. So when you look at your wedding band, you think of your spouse. And they're also associated with the relationship that you have with that other person. One of the outcomes here, and the clear sign, if you want the proof positive that you've got one of these person things going on, is that your love for the object rises and falls with the status of the relationship. So I once interviewed a guy whose father gave him these gold coins. And that was a really meaningful gift, a way that he felt very connected to his father. Then later, his father, he found out that his father had been having a long time affair and had been cheating on the mother. The marriage broke up. He very much sided with the mother and was furious with and hated the father who left the family. And when that happened, he went from loving these coins to hating these coins, and he actually gave them away to somebody else. He didn't even sell them. He gave them away as a gift to somebody else because he just sort of wanted to be rid of them. So you can see the value of the product sort of fluctuating with the relationship with the person. And this happens a lot with, say, celebrity spokespeople, where if it's person, thing, person, so it's the customer, the brand, and then the celebrity spokesperson. And if everything is good with that celebrity, people like the celebrity, then that rubs off on the brand. But if something bad happens, then with the celebrity, then that can tank the relationship with the brand. It's one of the reasons that a lot of brands are now using, say, animated spokespeople, or spokespeople that they not a celebrity to start with, but sort of a person they manufacture to be their celebrity, because it gives the brand more control. So we're going to look right here at 2 ads from Honda. One of them is mostly person thing. It's about the relationship between the person and the brand directly. The other one is mostly the person thing person ad. And it's pretty easy to tell which is which.
Once there was a young man who loved a car, and the car loved him too. The man didn't have much money, so the car didn't use very much. The man wanted to drive to college. The car happily carried everything he might need. The man took a job where he had to drive very far. The car got him there every day. One night, the man got into an accident. The man was frightened, but the car kept him safe. A few years later, the man got married, and one day said to the car he was having triplets. But the car only had so many seats. So the man got a bigger car and gave his first car to a young girl who loved the car. And the car loved her too.
All right, so that is 99% the person in the car and their relationship and the good things that the car does for the person. You would see that kind of thing would be very effective. That car is not unanthropomorphic, but if the car looks more like a person, that gives that kind of approach even more power. But now let's look at person, thing, person situation.
I met Kevin in school when we were both taking the same science class. We started studying together and we became friends, and eventually we started to date, and now we'll be getting married 4 years exactly after the day we started dating. We are definitely a Honda family. A lot of people, my sister drives a Honda, my mom drives a Honda. Both my nieces and my nephew were brought home from the hospital in Hondas.
CRVs, we thought we'd do a little more.
Your very first day to Gang Stars playing music. Congratulations from Shannon and all.
Kevin. I hope everything works out well for you today. The sun is shining on you and you both have a lovely future together.
Hi, Maria and Kevin. Sorry I can't be there in your special day.
I hope you're as happy for the rest of your lives as you are today.
All right, so in this situation, Honda, it's not about like their relationship with the cars, but it's all about the brand as connecting these two people together as they get married, then them with their family is from Ireland, and you know, the whole thing. And so this whole web of social relationships, and the brand is woven in and supporting those relationships in a really generous way. Oh, here's one more. You know, I even think I might have tried to show this ad earlier in the semester as part of a different lecture, because I think I might use this in 2 different places. We couldn't get the technology to work then. So here is the makeup, the reappearance. And this time I think I've got all the tech problems worked out. All right, so there, he goes to the parents' house. They have the Fancy Feast cat. It's always the same cat, or not sure it's not the actually same cat, but the same looking cat, right? In all of their ads. And he sees how much she loves that cat. And so then as a proposal to her, does this wonderful thing, sets up the whole room, makes the whole house, right? And then has this super adorable kitten. And I have to think that I just hope the relationship works out, because, you know, there's no way that she's ever going to say no to that wedding proposal once it comes with the cute little kitten. That's like 100% yes guarantee on that. So I hope that she didn't just marry him for the kitten, because that wouldn't be good. Anyway, again, showing out how the product supports the pet and the pet binds people together. So it's really about the relationships. The pet's important, but it's important in part because of the way it plays this role in the interpersonal relationships. All right. So until about a year ago, I just had these 3. The anthropomorphism, part of yourself, part of someone else, as ways of creating some brand love that would get the person's brain to treat the product in some way like a person. Through one of my consulting projects, I developed this 4th idea that I think is actually pretty doable and could be pretty important as a way of promoting this stuff. So if you think about like warm relationships, they tend to be based on trust, care, and protection. They're with a select person or group, right? You don't treat everyone. You've got your best friends and your family, and you may treat other strangers well. I hope you do. I hope you treat them in a moral way and in a nice way. But you have this, a small select group of people that you have these close, intimate relationships that go beyond that. They're not overtly about money, your relationships with your friends. And they're closer when you spend a lot of time with the other people. And so you have all of these attributes. And the idea here is a little different from anthropomorphism. So in anthropomorphism, you want to make the object appear human. But in this situation, you want to make the relationship with the brand or with the company or with the object appear like a close human relationship. So it's sort of a little bit anthropomorphic, but different in that way. These relationships would be special relationships. Not everyone wants a close relationship with the company, and that's okay. So a lot of companies have a relationship with a select group, like Gold Elite Frequent Flyers, and that matches the format of human relationships where we have like strangers, and there's billions of them on the planet, but then we've got this small group of friends that we have this special relationship with. Companies already in some situations do that with customers. In these relationships, yes, the customer is going to pay for products. Money will be involved, but you don't want to make it feel like the relationship is totally just focused around money, because money brings things into this sort of commercial realm. So if you look at this woman, she's thinking, I know my boyfriend loves me. He risked getting hurt to keep me safe. That's really nice. I know my boyfriend loves me. He bought me a nice gift. That's also nice. I know my boyfriend loves me. After each date, he gives me $100 cash. Not so nice, right? It doesn't have the same effect. So if you're going to be creating this relationship with the customer, you want it to fall in one of these two groups more than just, a straight sort of cash transaction. It feels just like a cash transaction. If we saw here, this was a good example. Honda gave them a lot of different gifts that that were the same kind of thing you would give to a friend, and treated them very much like a friend, went over and above anything that they had asked for. So what in this sort of situation would consumers give and get? And so I'm talking about, just to be clear, I'm talking about some sort of a program like a frequent flyer program that some consumers would opt into. And other consumers who don't opt into the program, I guess another example of this is like Amazon Prime. It would be a good example. But I'm talking about something that might be even a little different from that. So some consumers would opt into the program, and the ones who opt in would buy the products, right? They would give positive word of mouth about the brand. They would give information about themselves. So they would participate in market research and give other information about themselves. They would get feedback. They would give feedback to the company on new products. A lot of these cosmetic brands that are really hot now, one of the reasons they're super hot is that they really involve the users as part of a community in developing the brand's products. So some of you, let's see a show of hands, I'm curious, do any of you even either visit the website Glossy for cosmetics and beauty stuff? Any people are familiar with the Glossy website, or buy the brand Glossier? So this is a really rapidly growing, really passion brand with some people are into this stuff. And it started off just as a website where people would talk about cosmetics and beauty issues. And then eventually it became its own developed its own set of products. And the participants in the website give a lot of input into the product's creation. And this has a great, they really feel attached and connected to the product because they've helped, create it in this way. So you would give feedback on new products, participate in online communities. So the consumers are really giving a lot. What are consumers going to get? They're not just going to get like a certain percentage discount, because that makes it all about money again. Instead, they're going to get product advice that truly puts their interests first. So they'll be able to call up the company and say, I want to buy a refrigerator. And the company will say, for your needs, you don't need this more expensive one. It's not actually going to help you. This is the one that really is going to, the cheapest one that's going to do what you want. So they have this sort of customers' needs first. They'll get extended warranties because friends help their friends. If it breaks, if I sell something to a friend and it breaks, even though I'm not obligated legally, I'm still going to, take it back or fix it or something. They'd get home service because friends go out of their way to help each other. They would get first access to special opportunities, like if there are any sales that are going to be going on. If they participate a lot, they could get social status within the brand community. That's a huge driver for these brand communities. They would also, the customers get occasional surprise gifts. So these would not be promised to them in any way. But then every once in a while, they may have talked to the company about needing, some new kitchen appliances, and the company might call them up and say, you know what, we've got this. We remember you said you needed a new microwave. We just happened to get one returned. This is refurbished. How'd you like it, right? Or something like some sort of a free gift that would really raise their sense of involvement. This actually, about a week ago, I had a flat tire. I took it to a tire repair place around the corner. I came to pick it up. The guy said, well, you had a slow leak from the rim. All we need to do is clean it. I said, how much do I owe you? He said, nothing. We fixed it for free. Just remember me next time you need new tires. And I thought, I definitely will, right? You fixed my flat for free. I will definitely remember you the next time I need new tires. So these little occasional sort of surprise gifts, and maybe even ongoing relationship with a person, depending on how much money is involved in this relationship. There might be like a staff person at the company that they call on a regular basis if they want something or have a question about the products. There's actually an individual person that they will deal with and develop this sort of relationship with. We're getting towards the end here, but one of the things that really marks our relationships with our close friends is that we spend a lot of time together. And we do a variety of things together. So if you have a friend that like all you do together is like you play poker, but you never see that person for other things, that's, a reasonably close friend. But if you have a friend who you play poker with and they come over to your house for dinner and you go to movies with them, et cetera, not only are you spending more time, but you're also seeing them in a variety of different contexts. That really creates a much stronger relationship. So if you can, as a brand, find ways for the consumer to connect, spend more time using the brand, and also use the brand in a number of different parts of their life, this will also create a much stronger relationship. All right. So this will be something for you to look at yourselves afterwards. There's a question, and you can click here to hear the audio.
I had a very
and that's really it. Oh no, that's better. That's really it for the for our last lecture together. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I get. So is there really a question that we have that's due after this lecture, or is that just an old slide?
Whatever the syllabus says. If I think that's in the syllabus. If it's not in the syllabus, then it's not really due. But I mean, memory is it's in the syllabus. Hold on.
Like it's due next week, Monday.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
very easy question. It's just to keep you thinking about these things.
Professor, this last part of communal relationship, this is a new slide, a new presentation, because I think in the one that is in Blackboard is not the same.
The one that I put up for you isn't the same.
Yeah, it's missing the communal relationship part.
All right. Well, I will put up another version right away. I'll get that up probably tomorrow morning. Right away means tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. Sorry about that. Kevin.
You have a presentation. I do have my audio.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you have a presentation posted, The Origin of Love, Expanding Circles of Love.
Yeah.
Which you have animals move from water to land, fewer children, parenting was needed. Sort of to disagree between jump 2 to jump 3. Different animals have different parenting models and strategies for evolution success. Typically like monogamy and how much investment in the child sort of determines how many children are in a brood per se. So I don't know. It's
that's not an original idea to me. There's a view that is sort of a big question in evolutionary biology, which I do not claim to be an expert on, but I've done a lot of homework on it for the book I'm writing. And the question is, the earliest animals did have, we believe, a model of reproductive success that was based on just having more and more offspring. And basically, the more offspring you could have, the more likely you were that some would survive. And that was sort of where evolution was pushing them. And then somewhere along the line, some animal species started to develop a different system where they would actually, have fewer kids, but then put time and effort into parenting and supporting those children so they were more likely to survive. And the evolutionary biologists think that the first sort of impetus that moved some animals in this direction of having smaller families but more parental investment was the move from when all animal life was in the oceans to, this was about 500 million years ago, some animals started clawing their way up onto the land, having offspring on the land. And the reason was that if you're in the water, you can lay eggs without shells, and they do very well, and you can lay a lot of eggs that way. But if you go up onto the land, it's much harder to produce a huge number of eggs that will be viable. You have to have them in shells, et cetera, because the land just isn't as nice a place for letting eggs sit there. They get dried out. And so that caused a great reduction in the number of offspring that the animals were having, that then put evolutionary pressure on them to help the ones that they did have grow up. So that's the theory. I'm not heavily invested in it. It happened supposedly 500 million years ago. I'm old. I wasn't there. That was too long. So it's one of these things, that people can make good arguments about why it might or might not be, but I don't think, short of a time machine, I don't think we're ever going to really know exactly what was happening there. But it's good you're thinking about it. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, just the last time our group met about the project, we were a little confused on the portion of the paper that's the executive summary and the portion that's the positioning, because they seemed a little bit redundant. So we were curious, do we take like at the bottom of the project, the positioning part, and boil kind of reduce that down to an executive summary and just allow it to be redundant?
Yeah,
Or
that's
how
basically
do we
right.
do that?
The executive summary is redundant with what's out, because the executive summary really is a summary of the whole report or the most important parts of the report. So it's you always are going to have an executive summary, and it's important because most of the time it's all people actually read from the report. So I want to give you some sort of preparation in creating that, but it is going to be redundant. Like there shouldn't be anything in the executive summary that isn't also somewhere else in the report.
Okay, I guess the reason I asked was like after we wrote the positioning portion, we were like, well, we kind of feel like we just wrote the executive summary.
Right.
So now do we take this and make it kind of a shorter executive summary and then paste it in the beginning?
And that's kind of what it is. It should be very short. It should be short, right? And just hit like the most key points in a quick way. Also, though, the executive summary may include material that's from the earlier parts of the report. It's not necessarily all from the positioning statement part.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I am super excited. I am, by the way, finishing up the grading on the third thing that you submitted. You will get to see those grades soon. Soon-ish, as soon as they're done. And I am really looking forward to hearing from all of you in a week. And hurrah. So we're almost there. Keep going, it's a marathon. You're at mile 22. Pretty close. Have a nice night.